We are back to wrap up our NBA play-in coverage, and to start things out, we're going to talk about the Heat versus Hawks matchup yesterday night. Now, apparently, the broadcasting team during it referred to these squads as play-in veterans, which is not necessarily a club that you want to be a part of. And granted, with the Hawks still remaining at having around a 500 record as a franchise all time, and with the Heat also just not fielding a great enough team to be in the upper echelon of the league, it's no secret that these have been annual play-in regulars here. That's just not a good thing. Also, prior to this game, they'd matched in the play-in tournament the previous 3 years, with the Heat winning every single one of them. So not only have the Heat just held Trae Young in check in the playoff series in 22, but they also have not beaten the Heat in any sort of postseason setting. So they were definitely going to be at a disadvantage, even with rosters that look somewhat different compared to those past teams. And earlier on in the ball game, the Heat would do an exceptional job of imposing their own game plan. They just darted out to a 10-0 lead to open up the scoring in the first quarter by literally just barreling down in the paint. And throughout the entire, honestly, for most of the game, you could argue Trae Young was just in a box, man. They were throwing multiple bodies at him. It was difficult for him to find the open space he would need to get shots to go. He got a few solid finishes at the rim, but nothing came easy. And honestly, when guarding a superstar like Trae Young, that is all you can ask for. After Zachary Risacher did hit an and one, the Heat started to crumble just a little bit as the Hawks were able to make an incremental push and decrease the lead just a little bit, but the Heat had their responses ready to go, and they would still end the first quarter with a 9-point advantage in the margins. Then the second quarter would see them dead even. But honestly, even if you look at it on face value and see that both teams scored 29 points, they had very, very different paths of reaching that particular point. I mean, the Hawks were able to initiate a few things, but their Achilles heel had been shooting. Now, granted, it sunk them in the last game because of their inability to shoot effectively from the field. And you could argue that more of the same was happening to start out this game. I mean, seriously. As the Heat were just getting every shot that they wanted, it seemed like, and just playing sound defense generally by just crashing in the paint and throwing multiple bodies at Trae Young, you would think that shooters on the outside would be able to capitalize a little more, like the Heat players were. Like Haywood Highsmith had multiple open looks himself. Duncan Robinson got some shots to go, and Tyler Hero was, of course, doing Tyler Hero things. Nobody on the Hawks could generate that for a while, and in fact, they started out the ball game just shooting 1 of 13 from the three-point line. It's no wonder that they were down by as much as 17 in the earlier portion of the second quarter. How are you truly going to last with any basketball team shooting that below average? Incredibly bad. Ironically enough, it would take a three-pointer from George Niang off of a Karis LeVert assist to get things going for them. And honestly, it's safe to say that if not for both Georges Niang and Caris LeVert, this game would never have had a chance to turn around at all. But we'll delve further into that point when we get there. Kel'el Ware would also continue his great two-way play, even with him being a rookie and with this being his first real exposure to anything involving postseason play. He was playing well. To this point, still in the second quarter, he had shot perfect from the field. He had multiple blocks, and his defensive pressure was just too damn great to ignore. As I stated, his ability to hold it down on that side of the ball just makes their game plan on the defensive side of the ball so much more flexible. There are so many things, so many structures you could operate in. The game plan is wide open for you. And you would think that Spoelstra would understand that. Now, even with him still being in, again, the Hawks, as they did in the first quarter, they had little windows to make some minor pushes. They even managed to get a Caris LeVert three-pointer at the end of the second quarter, but they were still down by 9 points heading into the second half. And to this point, you still wanted to see more from Trae Young. I mean, it just wasn't happening. They couldn't get anything to go for him. A lot of his shots were becoming more errant by the minute, just looking for one to fall and hopefully fall into some kind of rhythm. That's how bad it was getting out there. But it still wasn't as bad as Zachary Risacher. Oh boy. So, at this point, I believe that Trae Young was something like 2 of 13 or 3 of 14 from the field. That and one from Zachary Risacher would be the only field goal that he made in the game, period. Now, they would start him in the third quarter, but it felt like as I was watching this unfold, there was something I was able to diagnose from this. Because Trae Young and Zachary Risacher, no matter how you slice it, both of them were playing terrible. The fact that Zachary Risacher would finish this game shooting 1 of 11 from the field and missing all 7 of his three-point attempts is revealing. Still, the fact of the matter was that when just one of them were on the court at one time, and especially Trae Young, obviously he's a superstar, so there's going to be more of an impact there. But with just one of them on the court, at any given moment, the Hawks were able to start making runs then. And their offense was severely hindered with both of them on the court at the same time. It would remain that way to start off the third quarter, as they would continue to leave shooters open as well. I mean, right into the beginning of the third quarter, you let Alec Burks just get the freest three-pointer imaginable. And they go back and forth a little bit with a couple of responses. And Okongwu, to his credit as well, when you didn't have guys like Risacher stepping up, Okongwu was balling out throughout the entire course of this game. I mean, yes, Kel'el Ware was giving him a little bit of work on the interior on the defensive side of the ball and hindering his offense there a little bit. But still, he was able to get some mid-range shots. He hit a couple threes for them. And on this particular play, and probably a situation that kind of changed the momentum temporarily, he was able to get a steal on Tyler Hero on ball on the perimeter and convert a two-pointer on the other side. Then all of a sudden, the Hawks, in a blur, in a hurry, would get within 3 off of Trae Young dimes, with one to Mohamed Gay for a three-pointer, and then Onyeka Okongwu once more revealing himself as a mainstay of this squad. It's no wonder that they decided to commit to him for a little bit more time. He is very much capable of being their starting center for the next few years. And he deserves to be. Like, this is no disrespect to Clint Capella, but it's like, man, there's got to be a changing of the guard at some point. Because with how versatile he can be, and we saw that on display during this game, bro, the sky is the limit if you just give him more of a chance. The Heat were able to bring the lead back up to 9 eventually, with another contribution from Kel'el Ware on an alley-oop this time, before Georges Niang would get in again with another two-pointer. The Heat would just dart out to yet another double-digit lead, and the Hawks would then, with a contribution from Caris LeVert, eventually get the lead back under 10. Along with Okongwu also making them pay on the outside with a 3 of his own. Immediately after they subbed out Kel'el Ware. And I want you to just keep that in mind. Because the Heat had a 10-point lead with Kel'el Ware still in the game. And they would sub him out with 2 minutes and 5 seconds left in the third quarter. I kid you not, right after that, their entire defensive structure just crumbled. They still had some success, but without that threat of a true, yes, Bam Adebayo is technically a center, but he is still considered to be undersized at this point. Without that extra pressure and help, the Hawks were able to get theirs in every way imaginable. Now, it would be a while before they took the lead, but they were throwing and landing some punches. Not before a pretty weird sequence that saw Kyle Anderson get a fucking 3-pointer with a damn near buzzer beater in play here in the left corner of the court, before Georges Niang would hit one from the top of the key. And then on the next Heat possession, you would have Kyle Anderson, with the shot clock winding down, hit a turnaround jumper on the fucking right corner of the court for 2 points. Like, what the fuck? As fluky as that was, and the fact that the Heat would still retain a 9-point lead, it wasn't enough, because by the start of the fourth quarter, shit got crazy now. You would have Caris LeVert just getting involved in some pretty good facilitating, and then Trae Young with this 3 right here. Despite all of his struggles earlier on in the ball game, he really turned it up in the fourth quarter. You can't deny that. And it would start with this Trae assisted on by Niang. Now, again, once more, the Heat had a few responses, but with Dyson Daniels hitting a 3-pointer, which is a little bit of a rarity for him. As great as he is defensively, offense isn't necessarily his strong suit just yet. And even broadcasters on the team alluded to that. But naturally, they understand that and recognize if he could develop a jump shot, and just aggressive offensive play, along with his defensive presence, hey, that just opens the floodgates up. The Heat would miss a jumper, and then Caris LeVert would get a strong rebound and throw an exceptional outlet pass out to Terrence Mann, who would then convert a tough layup over Haywood Highsmith. Then all of a sudden, with another Trae Young three-pointer in which they literally just gave him an open shot from the top of the key, that gave him all the confidence he needed to pull up and fire it. He made it. And while the Heat were able to respond immediately, the Hawks were able to recalibrate and get some more offense going for them, maintaining a 6-point lead up until around the 5-minute mark with a three-pointer and dunk from Okongwu off of just pure defense from him. So while, again, some of their other wings weren't stepping up, but when all else failed, you could look at Okongwu as the big man, just taking it upon himself to generate a lot of offense. And they were relying on him to do it too. That speaks volumes about him. Then you had LeVert and Mann in some cases, and especially Niang, just coming off of the bench and hitting timely shots. But could that last? Because they still had a job to do. If they wanted to secure a playoff spot, they would have to hold. And it's safe to say that the Heat would not let that happen in the slightest. They would spark up a little run of their own towards the end of the fourth quarter, starting things off with a rare Davion Mitchell three-pointer, which for him, they came few and far between. To this point, he was like 2 of 10 shooting on the night. So the fact that he even got that is a bit of a miracle in its own right. But then you would have Tyler Hero single-handedly take over the ball game, making a couple of shots in a row before Andrew Wiggins and Bam Adebayo combined for one of the weirdest buckets you'll ever see. Yes, he got the offensive rebound off of a Haywood Highsmith miss, but in real time, I kid you not, it looks as if both Adebayo and Wiggins touched the ball at the same time, and it happened to just lift upwards and into the basket. That's just quite the weird moment you'll see. Just a full sea of hands forcing the ball upwards, and it went up and in somehow. But either way, a bucket is a bucket in that moment, which they got just near 2 minutes left in the ball game. Then you would have George Niang with a response for some reason, and you would have them trading buckets back and forth. We even got another weird bucket from the Heat this time, as Tyler Hero would essentially miss a three-pointer. And yet, Haywood Highsmith would control what I guess you could call a pass in that moment with a single one of his hands and get it in off the backboard for a layup. But Trae Young, not to be outdone, would keep it within one. All of a sudden, with another Tyler Hero miss, the Hawks had a chance to take full control of the matter. But for whatever reason, they decided to give Niang the rights to the final shot. And I just didn't understand that in that moment. Now, yeah, he was playing well, don't get me wrong. But, bro, like, this is not the time to give over the reins like that. Do they not understand who they have on their team? It's going to be his time to take things over here. And he's going to be the one getting the ball, not Niang. So they definitely made an error there. Still, they would have a chance to right their wrongs because eventually they would be forced to send Tyler Hero to the free throw line, and he would actually miss the second one to make it a 2-point ball game. Without fail, they had the perfect out-of-bounds play to get Trae Young open in the backcourt, and Andrew Wiggins would match up on him during this time. Because prior they had tried it with Davion Mitchell, but he essentially forced what ended up being a pretty smart foul to just stop all momentum there. To not reveal their true intentions on defense. They had to shake things up a little bit. So Andrew Wiggins guards them on the perimeter. They set they didn't even necessarily set any screen, but Andrew Wiggins was essentially in a situation where he was pressing up just enough to where Trae Young decided to exploit him with some dribble moves and try to blow past him. And he was able to do so. As long as Andrew Wiggins, he still was able to get in reach for a potential shot block. But Trae Young, activating true playoff intensity and anticipation, was able to just lay it in such a tough way on a very awkward angle. And it tied up the ball game. Despite the Heat's run, the Hawks, at the end of this regulation period, would give themselves another chance in overtime. Now, to preface things, it was looking scary for the Heat because on the season, they had 15 losses when leading after the third quarter. So the fact that they were able to rally back is a good testament to their awareness. Still, in a 5-minute extra period, with any number of things bound to happen, it was all going to come down to their continued efforts. And while the Hawks would be able to keep pace just a little bit, for whatever reason, they could not stop Davion Mitchell's hustle during this period. Now, had he been struggling all night? Yes. But there was something about this overtime period that just truly activated him. I don't know. Because he would hit back-to-back threes on back-to-back possessions and then draw a defensive foul that led to another Miami Heat bucket from Andrew Wiggins. All of a sudden, this went from a 1-point ball game to the Heat now having a 9-point lead in overtime. Now, Okongwu and Trae Young would respond with back-to-back threes of their own. But Tyler Hero would get one to go, and then Davion Mitchell, once more, after a few trades on possessions between both teams, he would have a chance to close out the ball game, and he missed his first attempt from deep. But he must have known that it was going to be off to an extent, because he zoomed in for the potential offensive rebound, got it, passed it, just kind of walked across the baseline for a second to try to anticipate his next spot, location for another potential attack. And he eventually worked his way back to the basketball, getting back to nearly the same area on the left wing of the court to fire up another three and green it, effectively ending the ball game in the Hawks' season as the Heat would win 123-114 in overtime for the first of the play-in matches yesterday night. Couldn't have asked for a better prelude to postseason. I mean, the effort was just on full display. I didn't even mention how many different times in this ball game, amidst all the other chaos that I was talking about with the tip balls getting in for fucking buckets. Bro, everybody was just hustling their asses off. Long rebounds were becoming more difficult as both teams were just trying to dog the hell out of each other on the glass. I mean, it was something to see, truly. And a lot of those attempts were timely. You couldn't even deny it. So the effort, even if, it might not have paid off in the long run in some aspects, in the particular moments of these games, it mattered tremendously. And again, you got to credit the Hawks, man. They could have just went out completely at rock bottom in this one, and they decided to give it their best through and through, especially down the stretch. As much as Trae Young struggled, he had a hell of a performance and helped to rally them back. 29 points on 9 of 22 shooting with 4 threes for him, along with 11 assists and 5 boards. And Okongwu played 50 minutes in this ball game and put up 28 points, 12 rebounds, 3 steals, and a block without a single turnover, shooting 12 of 19 from the field and making 4 of his 8 three-pointers. That's great. Off the bench, Niang and LeVert combined for 35 points. And again, both of those guys, some of the shots that they hit came in during those runs that eventually allowed the Hawks to take a lead late in the game and just keep them in it, even when it felt like they were just slipping tremendously. Dyson Daniels also had 11 points, 10 rebounds, 4 assists, and 3 steals, won 5 of 13 shooting with just 1 3 made. Again, like Risacher, bro, just 3 points and 2 steals. But that just is just atrocious shooting. It's as simple as that. I don't care if he's a rookie, because again, we can give that same kind of treatment to Klay Thompson last year. We just gotta call it what it is. That's ridiculous, and it was piss poor. He played so bad that he literally got played out of the ball game. They benched him. He only logged 16 minutes in this game. And so many other wing players were able to get playing time over him, and they contributed way more than he did. That's just it's not good. Can't act like it is. The Hawks were able to, the Heat were able to win this game by committee. Tyler Hero had 30 points still, though, along with 8 rebounds and 7 assists on 10 of 21 shooting with 5 threes. Andrew Wiggins had 20 points, 8 rebounds, and 8 assists on 8 of 17 shooting. Bam Adebayo had 17 points, 11 rebounds, and 5 assists with 2 steals and 5 blocks even on 8 of 14 shooting, doing a great job as a two-way player on his end. Davion Mitchell, off the bench, had 16 points. Majority of those coming in the fourth quarter and overtime. 5 assists as well on 5 of 13 shooting with 4 threes. Haywood Highsmith and Kello Ware had 12. Understandably so, Zachary Risacher did get benched very early. confusingly enough, Kelly Ware would not see the court after that 2-minute and 5-second mark at nearly the end of the third quarter. So, I just, yes, they won, but I seriously have to question what the fuck Eric Spoelstra was thinking. Not only did you see a double-digit lead completely dissolve, and then see yourself trailing by 6 points in the fourth quarter in clutch time. But you quite literally ruined your defensive game plan in the process. Because again, yes, Bam Adebayo had those stats on defense. Majority of those came out there. Some of it was initiated with just him in the lineup, but a good portion of that could be attributed to having Ware out there as another player in that interior to hold it down. And when he was guarding Okongwu was not willing to attempt some of these shots on him. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say that if you keep Kelly Ware in the game, you may not eventually lose your handle on the lead. But all I'm saying is that he'd been playing exceptionally well. He made every shot from the field. He had only 2 turnovers at this point. So it's not like he was hindering you offensively in any way. And defensively, yes, the lead did decrease tremendously, but you were still up by double digits. Still were. You don't think that you could have maintained that for the most part with having that continued defensive presence out there to allow you to continue to send multiple bodies to Trae Young and also be able to deter other shooters away from the basket? Because I kid you not, they were literally scared of having their shots be contested by Ware. He only blocked 1, but the amount that he was able to affect regardless of necessarily getting his hands on them. Just the mere concept of changing an individual shot trajectory made him a valuable piece to have out there. And you mean to tell me he played just 22 minutes while not even seeing the court in the fourth quarter or overtime? Again, yes, you won, but you still could have used him here. So I just think that was very egregious on his end. But they were able to win it. I mean, anytime you can shoot 50% from the field and also combine that with 38% shooting from deep while controlling the glass as well, it's going to be a long day for the opponent. Again, there was slippage there without having one of your core defensive pieces. So I really am just going to be looking out to see how that fares in their next matchup, because you can't necessarily afford to do that, especially if it's working for you. You've got to stick with that. Straight up. Moving on to the Mavericks and Grizzlies, to the final Western Conference playing game to decide the 8th seed for that side. And the Grizzlies, ooh, man, to make a long story short, they had full control of this game from the very jump. I just have to be completely honest about that. Yes, they had an 11-2 start against the Warriors when they played them on Tuesday night. But obviously that faltered right before their very eyes. And they were able to make it close eventually, but ultimately they were not able to overcome that and sustain their own jump. They did that and then some here. They ran out to a 7-0 start that would then snowball and snowball and snowball. They got up by as much as 20 points and then 21. Ultimately, they ended off the first quarter with a 39-24 advantage. And they were really just doing anything they wanted. Bro, Jaren Jackson Jr. off the rip had a 3 of his own. They were able to get quality points in the paint, especially in a situation where Ja Morant not only got an and one on Derek Lively II, but also later in the quarter, he would have a chance to get up for a putback and actually fucking dunked it over Santi Aldama to wake up the Memphis crowd even more than they already were, given how blistering of a start this was. Now, granted, the Mavericks had some responses. I think Najee Marshall even dropped Ja Morant a little bit and got a 2-pointer of his own, but that wasn't enough. Even the Herculean efforts that would begin for Anthony Davis still did not allow the Mavericks to really do much of anything. Their entire defense was getting spaced out, and their wing shooters had no responses whatsoever. I mean, they couldn't hit a 3-point shot to save their life. They just couldn't. It would go much deeper than that, and I'll make that very clear when I get around to it. Because things would just continue to get worse and worse and worse and worse. The league got up to as large as 22 with a Zach Edey dunk, and that would be sustained for the most part. Then the Grizzlies got another short burst with a sort of 360 dunk from Santi Aldama that would increase the lead to 24 points. Then Santi Aldama would get another athletic dunk to increase it to 25. The Mavericks would be able to cut into it a little bit like they did in the first quarter, where Brandon Williams actually went coast to coast and got a buzzer beater there, and Brandon Williams would end off the first half by sinking a free throw to decrease the lead to 17. But that was still just so fucking bad. Morant had his first half in his career with 15 points, 5 rebounds, 5 assists, and also 3 steals. But he was in foul trouble. Also, again, even with being up by this much, the Grizzlies still had to worry about Anthony Davis. Because even if no one else was stepping up consistently enough for the most part, Anthony Davis made it very clear to Ja Morant earlier on that he was going to be around. His presence was felt. He had a high amount of points in the first half, by far leading the Mavericks in scoring. And, Klay Thompson and Brandon Williams, again, on and off, provided some help, but it just wasn't consistent or sustainable enough. Even though they would have bits of pushes in the second half with Anthony Davis's contributions, I mean, they got within 7 in one such case. But still, they just could not really establish enough of a consistent defensive presence on the interior to make the Grizzlies pay. Once they were able to, when they got this lead down to 7, life was rough for John Morant throughout this whole time. Even with him doing some of what he was doing, he wasn't having the greatest game scoring-wise. But all of that attention being focused on John Morant and sending multiple guys at him eventually forced them to get just less defensive on some of their rotations. And so many other players were just freed up to do things. You even had Marvin Bagley III getting multiple buckets for free because he just wasn't being accounted for. Ultimately, despite getting the lead down to 7, the Grizzlies would be right back up to leading by 18 points by the end of the third quarter. Fourth quarter was relatively just garbage time for both teams. Like, yeah, you had a few responses from the Mavericks as a last, sign of life, I guess. But it wasn't enough. It wasn't enough. And it sucks that Anthony Davis would have to be relegated to that. But, this had been just a clear representation of how the Mavericks season had gone and how far from grace they fell, if you really want to think about that. They would lose this game 120-106 as the Grizzlies would clinch the 8th seed in the Western Conference. I mean, they just did not, it wasn't even close. So as much as I would really love to get into the full context of the game at the same point, what I watched it wasn't even, there was no true firepower for that side. It only came from Anthony Davis for the most part, and bits and spurts from Williams and Thompson. That was it. Nobody else really did much of anything of note in a positive way. And I'm about to get into that. But yeah, the big takeaway from this, defense does in fact win championships, Nico Harrison. Defense does win championships. The fact that they got decimated like this, having a strong defensive lineup out there, you could argue. I mean, bro, you're starting P.J. Washington Jr., you're starting Anthony Davis, and you're starting Derek Lively II, and y'all got torched the fuck up, off rip. I don't know how we're supposed to take that seriously. It's just pitiful to say. Maybe it will in one of these next few years, I guess. But as far as this one goes, Mavericks season is fucking done. And we're talking about defense winning championships. Clearly doesn't here. Their defense got toyed around with. Nobody knew what the hell they were doing at any given point of time in this game. You had the formula. You had the formula Yes, it does hurt that Kyrie Irving didn't play. I get it. But all of this talk about defense this, defense that, you had virtually no offensive firepower outside of Anthony Davis. And you figured that things would become harder for him because they're going to start throwing double teams at him and daring other players to shoot it. So, yeah, defense can certainly help. And there are cases where it does, in fact, win championships. It pays to have a great defensive roster 1 through 14 on any given rotation. I understand that. But at the same time, if you cannot match in some capacity with the scoring output, especially with how things started in this, you could not even go toe-to-toe with them on the offensive end. You gotta be able to make some kind of shot in order to give yourself a chance. Like, what good does forcing the other team to miss multiple shots in a row do for you if you're not going to capitalize off them yourself? That's where the Mavericks found themselves at. And then defense winning championships is ironic. They didn't even live up to the reputation completely. They got dominated in every stretch of the imagination. They weren't able to even generate as many turnovers as they gave up on their side of the ball. They were just manhandled on the glass. They were manhandled in the paint by Edie and Jackson Jr. and other guys like Bagley III and Conchar and Morant. Pippen Jr. got himself a few paint points. Aldama had a few paint points. Like, everybody was getting in there. Without resistance. But you believed that you built something that was so physically imposing and just overall effective that it would lead you to the promised land when you were nearly already there last season with virtually the same core. It just doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. And it's so bad as well because, bro, as shit was just getting worse. Oh, man. Every time they pan that camera over to that man, Anthony Davis went down with a brief injury for a little bit. They panned the camera right over to that man, and he gave the cameraman working that side the meanest fucking side eye imaginable. But now you had to face it. Like, now you wanted to be in the stands and show yourself. So you had to understand that cameras were going to be on you. But again, you don't want the criticism. You don't want the criticism. You don't want the negative attention. But you want to have the spotlight on you. It comes with that. As he would say, essentially, in this closed press conference that he had. So you can't necessarily say that behind closed doors, although obviously I guess you would be emboldened to by having a set team of fucking reporters to choose from. But I digress. You can't go and say that and then just operate in a completely different way altogether. which is, again, something that just hurts him even more because he's doing all his best, even if he might be a scapegoat here. He's doing his best to try to rationalize these things and saying things that he would be intent on standing by, but ultimately does not in the slightest. And in that case, that's about trust at that point. But again, a guy that is going to say all these things and then just do the complete and total opposite, and more importantly, trade a franchise player essentially just behind their back, under the table. How is that deemed trustworthy? At all. So honestly, he got exactly what he deserved. And I guess he won't necessarily have to see any national cameras again because your team isn't even going to the playoffs. You're not even going to be a part of the big dance to potentially get yourself in a fucking NBA Finals. And you probably wouldn't have gotten back there anyways. Meanwhile, your superstar and franchise player that you traded away is now in the playoffs. Without you and without your supporting cast. Now, granted, I ain't going to get into anything relating to the game ones, but I will say that they're reeling a little bit, but he's still there at least. And your ass is at home. Thinking about, I don't even know what the hell he'd be thinking about because you seem to not have any regrets, right? You're going to have to eat this for the next few months. But I guess ultimately, in a season where they may potentially get back Kyrie Irving in January, according to a report from Shams Charania earlier this week, we'll have to see then how it really fares for this team. Because in short, we really don't know. But, I mean, hey. If the entire stretch immediately following the trade is anything to reference, it ain't gonna be fun next few years in Dallas, man. And honestly, that's dependent on how fucking long they're gonna be there. If these bitch ass niggas are really trying to just get the rights over to Vegas, like, it's just a messy situation overall. And it just sucks that loyal fans to the franchise and quite literally the immediate successor to Dirk in multiple facets for that team had to be caught in the crossfire of things that are just far above their pay grade to an extent. It's fucking horrible. And in terms of things that are in control of the players, like I said, Anthony Davis balled out. 40 points, 9 rebounds, and 2 assists with a steal and a block on 16 of 29 shooting with 2 threes. Exceptional work. Klay Thompson had 18. Brandon Williams had 16 off the bench. Najee Marshall had 13. And Max Christie even had 11. But I need to put my focus on 4 people really quickly. Yes, Spencer Dinwiddie played just 4 minutes, but that nigga didn't score a fucking thing. That's pitiful. is pitiful. And he did not record a single stat either. Now again, this is well within garbage time, but you can see why he is on the bench now. And honestly, again, yes, they started a similar lineup of not having a true point guard in as their starter. But honestly, with the way that Spencer Dinwiddie operates, you know, there's a reason why they would not look to start that man, bro. I kid you not, every team he is a part of, he thinks he is the number one option, and he will do everything in his power to run that offense as such. He is so fucking inefficient and inconsistent. And honestly, in a situation like that, like, bro, if he was starting in this game, the score would probably be fucking worse. I'm not gonna lie to you, man. He would just mess up the whole flow of the fucking offense. That's how this thing goes with him. So I see why they didn't give him the reins there. I understand it, bro. Derek Lively II would also go scoreless in 20 minutes, though he did contribute 3 assists, 6 rebounds, 2 steals, and 2 blocks. But again, like, what are we doing? This is a game for your season. Now, like, Lively II's role is very different from most on the team, but you still have got to find a way to get a bucket somehow. There's just no way you can go that much time. Like, the fact that Marvin Bagley III logged as many points as he did over you is like, what? That can't happen in a potential setting to lead you to a playoff berth. That's unacceptable. Caleb Martin would also score nothing. And on his end, it's not even the fact that he didn't score anything in 11 minutes of play, but he also logged just 1 assist. And his defense was porous. He was getting torched at one point. Ja Morant, who had struggled all night long, did hit a fucking step back 3 over him. On top of multiple things to happen. Ironically enough, that 3 was his only made one of the night. But again, in that closed press conference, Nico Harrison spoke so fucking highly of Caleb Martin. And you go out there and you have him do that. He doesn't provide you with anything on the offensive end outside of 1 measly fucking assist. Not to mention that he had a 1 to 2 assist to turnover ratio. Not only does he do that, but he gets cooked and hunted on defense. While you just try to downplay Quentin Grimes the whole time and just put Caleb Martin on a fucking pedestal to go out there and do that shit. Like, if it's all about defense truly, once more, it just wasn't prevalent in this game. But you have the nerve to keep on trying to drive that point home and literally say that I'm repeating myself or some shit like that. Like, bro, you genuinely believe this? At what point do we call this delusional? Like, you're in the stands, you're watching this, and you're still gonna say the same shit. How? That's just tone deaf. Like, come on, man. And then PJ Washington Jr., same thing. He at least provides defensive presence, but, bro, in 27 minutes, he didn't log a single point on 5 shot attempts. He did contribute 2 steals, 3 assists, and 6 rebounds. But my fucking goodness, bro. And I literally, the timing of these missed shots were so bad. Like, I think that as they were inching closer and closer, he had a chance to put the icing on the cake and put even more pressure on the Grizzlies in that moment, and he breaks a wide open three. Like, at that point, you're just being a net negative to the team. As for the Grizzlies, Ja would have 22 points and 9 assists with 3 steals on 7 of 24 shooting. Absolutely atrocious. But again, his facilitating was good enough to really open up the floor for everyone else. I mean, when you look at it, Desmond Bane had 22 and 9. Jaren Jackson Jr. had 24, 7 and 4 with a block. Zach Edey had 15, 11, and 2 blocks. Scottie Pippen Jr. had 13 points, and Santi Aldama had 11. That's just a pretty good, core of guys just contributing to the scoring on the night. And for the most part, again, their defensive front court with Edey and Jaren Jackson Jr. holding it down, along with Aldama to some extent. That was just, it was pretty good work for them. That's all you can ask for at the end of the day. Also, credit to Desmond Bane as well. Just as simple as that. To be an additional ball handler of sorts, along with Scottie Pippen Jr. and Ja Morant, obviously. It went a long way for them as far as this ball game went. So that would seal everything up for all the play-in games. Obviously, some of the Game 1 matches in the playoffs have begun to this point. I'm not going to get into any of those, but now that everything is set, I will just briefly look into some of the matches the matches tomorrow that involved all the play-in teams. So to start things off, you would have the Grizzlies now facing off against the Thunder. The main thing you have to know about this is that the Grizzlies, haven't beaten the Thunder all season long. They went on 4 against them, and there was a graphic that stated, essentially, that they had been beaten in every way imaginable. Not just in margin of victory, but in so many fucking metrics. And now you're going to tell me that you're going to be without Brandon Clark, who's out for the season, and without Jalen Wells, who's out for the season. Both of whom could pose as potential threats against guys like Chet Holmgren and Jalen Williams. So the matchups there could be rougher for Memphis here. It is going to take everything, and I mean everything, that they have offensively to just match against the Thunder. And you're still at a potential disadvantage if you have to rely on that, because offense is not going to come easy against a team that remains as one of the top defensive units in the league. Obviously, with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander being the leading scorer in the NBA, you would think that their offense, yes, their margin of victory is high as hell, but it is their defense that just suffocates opponents, and you can argue that that is the best aspect of their roster, not necessarily their offense, which is pretty fucking scary. So again, I don't necessarily know about this series, but we will see. Similar thing with the Magic and the Celtics. But again, the Magic are really going to have to limit the three-point shooting, because the Celtics have proven this year, at least, that when they don't shoot as effectively from range, they can be had. And teams have found a way to make that happen. When they can just stay attached to three-point shooters, and not only that, but legitimately contest them, get hands up, get physical with them, don't give them any ounce of space to work with. The Magic are going to have to rely on that heavily. And they, in turn, it's going to be hard for them to impose their own brand of basketball, which is mainly focused on getting looks on the interior. I mean, against the Celtics squad that can literally guard every single player on that team 1 through 5, no matter what player on the Celtics we're talking about as far as the starting lineup goes, especially. Their defense is so portable. So you're not just going to be able to get every single look you want inside the 2-point line. It's not going to happen. Like, the Celtics are clearly a great defense in their own right. So it should be a true battle of strengths. But again, Magic are going to have to severely limit their offense. That task becomes harder when you recognize that they are still going to be without Jalen Suggs at this point. That hurts them tremendously. I mean, he is a very great on-ball defender in his own right. So, you know, to have to rely on some of your other, I guess, inconsistent guards to try to hold up on that end, it's going to be asking a lot. They're going to have to take a massive step up on that end. And I don't necessarily know if they are capable of making that happen, to be honest. The Heat are set to face off against the Cavs. The Heat become the first 10 seed ever to advance to the playoffs. And to be honest, in some of their previous matchups, the Heat actually made things a little competitive against the Cavs. But to be honest, I don't really know about their chances. I mean, as far as things look here, I mean, okay, yes. Let me see. Yeah, so the Heat won the first matchup on December 8th and then lost the last two. Both of those were competitive, though. And granted, I mean, in this win, yeah, everybody was healthy. But obviously, again, Heat look a little different without Jimmy Butler III, of course. So, I don't know. I don't know what to think about this. The Heat, though, I mean, really, when you think about it, it could be interesting. Obviously, the Cavs are too deep to necessarily lose. I don't think they're going to lose this series. Like, man, their rotation is just so complete that there is almost no way they can lose, bro. I'm not going to lie to you. Their players are capable of a wide variety of things, no matter what you're looking for. And you're asking a Heat team that, yes, defensively, they could try to limit as much as they can at the same time by honing in on one or two things, the Cavs are already going to be one step ahead in their preparation and in their particular setup of different plays. I just can't necessarily see the Heat overcoming that. But at the same time, let's be honest, the Heat, even with losing Jimmy Butler III, their core of guys have all been through it. All of them. The Cavs simply have not. No matter how you want to look at it. Like Darius Garland and Jared Allen and Evan Mobley are still very young. Sam Merrill is still very young and doesn't have a lot of playoff experience. Ty Jerome has only a brief amount of playoff experience. DeAndre Hunter has a brief amount of playoff experience, even though he was a part of that Hawks team that did make it to the Eastern Conference Finals in 21 against the Bucks. But that doesn't stack up against the squad who has literally made multiple finals runs in this decade alone, and even through their struggles have slayed some giants in the Eastern Conference. Yes, a lot of that was with the help of Jimmy Butler III, but I'd be a fool to think that some element of that hasn't rubbed off on guys like Adebayo or Hero. So there's a chance that they could sneak up on the Cavs. But again, I don't necessarily like their odds of winning the entire thing. It's hard for me to really say that with a straight face. And then the Warriors will be having the nightcap in this one against the Rockets, clinching this series. Obviously, one of the recent outputs from Stephen Curry was very lackluster when we're talking about three-point ball game he had against them earlier in the month. At the same time, it has been a rather hot month for Stephen Curry. You saw in the play-in game that Jimmy Butler III is ramping things up as well. And really, the Rockets do pose a threat overall when it comes to their defense. But I feel like their offense can also be had too. I mean, like Schengen and Green are both very good players. And even they've proven over the course of the season that they have their own problems with lackluster shooting nights. Putting the right guy on Jalen Green, it has worked in the past, because even with him having that outing against the Warriors recently, in games that preceded that, bro, he was shooting so fucking terribly against them, and he was a non-factor. As long as the Warriors can find continuity with a specific lineup, that's really what it's going to come down to. Because that's how they got off to such a slow start this season. They just couldn't necessarily figure out what gelled together at the ideal time. Now, naturally, again, with this being a full-on series, you're going to have to adjust in some cases. But, you know, if you can have something like at its core, even if you shift different players in and out of the lineup, if you have some sort of focus that you commit to consistently, you're going to be set. if it is uniform throughout, no matter who you have in the lineup, they're not going to lose focus of the task at hand. They're going to be able to go out and handle business. So, I definitely like the chances there. And for a first round matchup, it should be a pretty good one. As far as some of the other developments go, I did mention the Kyrie Irving report. It'll also be mentioned that the Lakers extended Rob Pelinka for a few years, which makes sense. I mean, bro, the way the outlook of the team could be, especially after the trade to get Luka Doncic in the first place, just proves why he deserves to be a staple there. And it's been a pretty love-hate relationship with Pelinka and Lakers fans over just the past 6 years. I mean, they were in the fucking dumps. And they were calling for his head in 2019. Then he goes out in the free agency period in the summer to get Anthony Davis by a trade. And then all of a sudden they win a championship in the very first year. And he's on cloud nine and in good standing with the fan base as well. Then he just hits rock bottom again with the swing and the miss, subsequently. That was the trade for Russell Westbrook. Everybody getting on his head about that. Everyone calling for his job. Lakers went through a few years of just piss poor play for their standard. And, I guess their desire as a general fan base of just wanting to see better. Ultimately, you make the trade for Doncic and the future looks very bright. So I can see why they would want to capitalize on that. Because honestly, if you have someone in your corner that can make something like that happen, you best keep them around. Even though, again, the fact that this was done in fucking secret is still crazy to me. It's still just something to look into and investigate. But again, you can't deny he got him. Even when it seemed virtually impossible, he got him. Yeah. So there's that. There would also be a report stating that Greg Popovich apparently suffered a medical incident at a restaurant earlier in the week on Tuesday, but as of Friday, he was back home and in better condition. It's just like you just hope that he can continue to be in good health, because man, just even the slightest of issues could just mess you up completely in that stage of your life. So you really just hope that he remains to be okay and that he can continue to get well over the course of time. But that'll do it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.